Who would have ever thought that Neil Stevenson, the author of Snowcrash, a dystopian cyberpunk novel from 1992, would define the term metaverse as the place that we would all eventually be living? We're here with the great Anna Fong to discuss IP and the metaverse. This is Stuff You Should Know About IP. As you're planning out your second life in the metaverse, don't forget to schedule at least 8 hours a day for Stuff You Should Know About IP, the fastest growing podcast about intellectual property in both the real world and Mark Zuckerberg's fantasy land. Today's episode of Stuff You Should Know About IP is brought to you by the Patent Lawyer magazine. If you want to stay up to date with everything that's going on in the world of IP and patents, go to www.patentlawyermagazine.com. Each issue is free to read for up to 8 weeks. That's www.patentlawyermagazine.com for global news in the world of patents. Okay, Anna, Tom, let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg's alternate reality that he's creating.
Yeah, well, it's
and
funny.
I'm sure there's others involved, but it's just too easy to single out Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, let's single out Mark Zuckerberg as the king of the new metaverse, right?
Yes.
So before we launch into the IP stuff, just for some people who might not be thinking about the metaverse all the time, think of the metaverse as kind of an immersive virtual reality where people will, and this sounds crazy, but live. And here's what I mean by that. Right now, we already have metaverses, kind of like metaverse type things. I remember in 2004-ish, my old friend Irv Leonard used to work for a metaverse type FedEx plane delivery service. And he would actually have scheduled hours where he would have to fly planes for FedEx in this virtual reality. And he was kind of stressed about it. I got to get there, I got to do my flying, and he would land the plane. It was a whole immersive experience for him. And then, of course, we have people playing Fortnite like 5 or 6 hours a day. Friends of my kids are doing that right now. They're buying skins or clothing for their avatars. They're buying weapons. I mean, they're already doing it. And what Mark Zuckerberg is creating then is this world where people will probably do things like come home from work at 6 o'clock, strap in, and maybe that's like a bodysuit. Maybe there's like implants you put in, and essentially spend the next 6 or 7 hours in the metaverse, socializing, watching movies, buying stuff, going into stores, going to college, right? Going to college in the metaverse, right? Because the metaverse is a place that, in theory, eliminates all kinds of physical inequities that we have today. If you're too tall, too short, too fat, too thin, too bald, right? I could have hair in the metaverse, okay? I could have a beard. I could actually grow a full beard in the metaverse. I'm 5'7". I would love to be 6'2". I could be that in the metaverse. It eliminates all of these uncomfortable. I have acne, I have BO, I have, whatever. I don't have any of those things in the metaverse, right? I'm my perfect self. So it eliminates all these physical inequities, but then maybe it creates other inequities, right? Other types of inequities will emerge. But essentially, so this is a world that some people might live in full time. So the question is, what about IP, right? What about IP implications? So Anna, why don't you give us some of your thoughts on what are the intellectual property implications of having a place that maybe many of us live like 8, 10, 12, 15, 18, 24 hours a day?
Well, definitely for IP in the metaverse, there are definitely a lot of things that are still questionable and people don't understand about it, right? Yeah, there's, patent, we all know about that. There are people who are creating the metaverse that is building up whatever that you're talking about. In fact, actually, you mentioned about Meta just now. I would actually imagine that people are not starting to enter the metaverse after the office hour at 6. I think Mark Zuckerberg wants people to step into the universe at 9 a.m. in the morning, where they can start working and they can start virtual discussion and so on, right? It's not, so it starts much earlier.
Yeah, they actually have a job. So they might actually have a job in the metaverse, right? They're making their cold calls in the metaverse. You know, they're working somehow in the metaverse, right?
Precisely. And in fact, actually, I know people, I mean, I read somewhere that people are actually doing this now. They're wearing the VR, and they're actually spending 8 hours to full hours of working hours in the metaverse, where they can resize their screen, multiple screen, and so on. They are doing this now, and then they have a product doing that. And the reason why they said they can do this and they want to do this is because he has a cat at home, and the cat will mess up around the desktop and so on. So this metaverse actually is a very it's a very good way to avoid this. Maybe
avoid cat problems, right? I mean, yeah. I'm certain that Mark Zuckerberg in his board meeting with all of his brilliant scientists was explaining how this is to overcome cat problems, right?
Well, it can also overcome a baby's problems. I have a baby at home. Sometimes in the meeting that she will scream and cry, and then maybe in the metaverse he cannot come into my meeting and so on. He cannot appear in front of the camera. Right. So that's much better. But I mean, going back to IP, I think the much talked about issues now for IP in the metaverse is like the trademark issues, right? Because people are starting to, big brands are starting to file patents in specific class for virtual goods and so on, and retail goods that they can sell online. The question is, I mean, the question I think I have is, does it mean that you have to file this additional class for virtual goods and for all the jurisdictions? Because we know that metaverse is supposed to be, borderless, no particular jurisdiction, but we know IP is jurisdictional. So does it mean that when we apply for class, let's say 9 or class 35, do we have to file a broad class? So that means for big brands, I mean, they can afford, but it's still substantial amount of money, right? So that's it's really a big step that they have to think about.
That's a great question, Anna. I mean, think about it. What you're saying really is not what is the metaverse, where is the metaverse, right? Because imagine this, because yes, you're right, class 9 and class 35, I think class 9 is for downloadable virtual goods and class 35 is for retail stores with virtual goods. But imagine Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, first of all, where does this exist? Like, what laws govern? Where are the servers hosted? I mean, ultimately, is that the question? If the servers are in the US, it's US law. If the servers are in Singapore, it's Singapore law, etc. Because that's really the cool question about this. What if Mark Zuckerberg decides he is going to hide the servers? He's not going to tell anybody where they're located, right? He's going to figure out a place that he could have these servers and no one knows where they are. In that case, which law governs, right?
But could it be possible that it's not about the server, it's about where the user is?
Well, the question is, users though are everywhere, right? And it's not realistic that I think there's 193 countries that are part of the UN or something like that. You can't get 193 trademarks. No one can afford that, right? Right? No one can afford that. Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to get a trademark application filed and prosecuted in one country for most companies, Yeah. I mean, a good example is a few months ago or a few weeks ago, we did a podcast on Wendy's, which is a huge US chain that has places all over the world. They couldn't get a trademark in the Netherlands because of a small little shop that had a trademark on Wendy's for a hamburger shop. So the question is, what laws will govern this metaverse? Will it be Zuckerberg law? Will he be the king and he creates his own intellectual property laws ultimately? Because right now you can file in the US. I can get a US trademark on executive IP, right? Our trademark for our training services. But you're in Singapore, right, Anna?
Yeah.
Are you bound by my trademark in the US when you're in Singapore?
Of course not.
Absolutely
so
not.
In yours, I can establish executive IP here.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. You could establish an executive IP in Singapore with that trademark. But the point is, if we're in the metaverse, what if I have a college in the metaverse? People strap in, go to college in the metaverse, and I call my college Dystopia, okay? Dystopia University. Where do I get my trademark for Dystopia University? I get it in the US. Are you bound by that, Anna? You're in the metaverse in Singapore. Can you start a competitive Dystopia University in Singapore?
Well, but is there a metaverse? There's probably no metaverse in Singapore. Is the metaverse is going to be, together, right? I suppose. I don't know whether they have jurisdiction, within the universe.
Yeah. So
right,
is
so
it
who
is
governs
it is
them?
the
Because
metaverse
like you
in
said,
Singapore,
Anna,
or
shouldn't
is
it be based upon the person, right? Where they are.
Where they're infringing. That's what I mean.
I know. I think it's a really interesting question. So I called my buddy Bob Simpson, who's like one of the smartest guys I know. He's an intellectual property lawyer. And I said to Bob, where is the metaverse? And his answer, I have no idea. I said, well, okay. I said, forget the metaverse. How do you define whose law governs the metaverse? Is it where the servers are? His response, I have no idea.
But just when you mentioned that, if it is like Mark Zuckerberg who is defining the law because he's doing he's creating the platform, and now of course we all know that in the news that he is working together with policy makers and try to make the law right. I mean, from the start, as he mentioned, but I guess ultimately what they are trying to do, how they're going to implement it is going to be contractual. It's going to be the contractual law that is signed between the Metaverse platform and the users and etc. Right? So actually, it reduces to contract law.
Okay, so then who governs the contract law?
Yeah, that's the question.
Right, because you're right. Mark Zuckerberg could have contracts with us, but there's different contract laws in different countries, and he's not God, right? He's not the king. He's not a dictator. He's just a guy with a lot of money and a big brain. So then the question is, who would govern that law? And that's a really sticky wicket, right? Because somehow there has to be, what I think is cool about this is there might be a universal.
Uh-oh. Tom, you froze.
Let's get together and say, hey, we're all going to.
Wait, Tom, you froze. You got to go back.
Oh, okay.
You said
I don't know where I froze,
but
am
right
I back?
there's a universal.
Yeah, there's a universal trademark law. Imagine all the UN nations get together, 193 or so, I think, and they say, we're going to all agree that we can't make people get 193 trademarks to have a metaverse trademark. Let's agree on one. And what if this trademark law that becomes something in the metaverse becomes an international law, right? Because if you have a trademark in the metaverse and Anna's looking at Dystopian University and she's like, oh my God, I want to copy that because I'm in Singapore and not the US, well then the universal metaverse law for intellectual property will say, no, there's only one rule for every nation in the metaverse, and that is this, whatever that is. We come up with the trademark law. We come up with the copyright law. And oh, Anna, we come up with a contract law for you because you're probably right. It's going to be governed by contract. So all these nations are finally forced to get together and do what everybody really wants to do anyway, which is only file one patent application, one trademark application, one copyright application worldwide. What do you think of that?
My question for you is that who is going to enforce that?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Who enforces it? Now we need a meta court, right? So you walk in with your avatar, you stand at plaintiff's table, the other avatar is at defense table, there's an avatar that's the judge, and we have metaverse court. It's almost like we need an entire nation, which is the metaverse, with a constitution, with courts, with intellectual property laws and contract laws and police. Because think about that, stopping infringers, right? You don't have humans doing it, you have like bots doing it. Right? So you don't even need to have humans search it. Like right now, Getty Images is a company that like searches the internet for people stealing their images and then they send them cease and desist letters. They have like these bots that are always searching the internet, right? In the metaverse, it would be easy to detect trademark infringement because we just set up our universal metrics or laws or rules on trademark infringement, and the AI would take care of it, right?
Yeah.
AI.
If it is so simple, then I think that all the companies will like it.
Yeah, AI would become the police. AI would govern the metaverse because humans would set up rules and AI would govern it. So it would automatically take down trademark infringing sites, store signs. You're stealing a copyright, bam. Not only do you get fined, but your copyright gets taken down by AI. AI becomes the police. What do you think, Anna? Do you want to live in a world where AI owns you?
Well, I guess that's going to be very, very long time from maybe I don't live anymore when that happens, right?
No, you will, Anna. And your daughter, 18 months old, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What's her name?
Isabel.
Isabel might have to deal with the AI police in the metaverse, where she's spending her entire life.
That's right. But I guess that what is more closer to our time is probably perhaps the police. I mean, you of course nowadays because of the IP rights is always like adjudicated by courts and so on. But there are also alternative ways to solve the dispute, right? You can go for arbitration, etc. Maybe for Metaverse at the beginning at least, I guess arbitration and all that sort of things might be one way because by that you can actually decide which law to use, etc. You can also state it down in the contract, right?
Well, yeah, but keep in mind though, under our new universe, under our new plan, Anna, we are already going to have 193 countries adopt a constitution for the metaverse. Okay, so it's already going to be created then within 7 years from today. What is it? It's March 4th, 2022. On March 4th, 2029, there will be a universal constitution for the metaverse, which includes intellectual property laws.
Is this a prophecy?
What's that?
Are you prophesizing right now, Tom?
Yes. And we permit.
We'll check 7 years later.
Yeah. We permit AI. We all agree that AI is going to police intellectual property rights because they're better at it, right? I mean, humans are so scatterbrained and vague, right? We're just not certain on things. But AI, if you watch Terminator, you know this. AI is brutally certain, right? And we create the rules for AI. And then there will be like some master programmers that can tweak it when it's gone awry. So, Ray, when we have our March 4th, 2029 podcast in the metaverse,
yeah,
we can go back to this prophecy.
And we can do an update. It'll be like a time capsule of stuff you should know about IP.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
so,
we'll see.
If we're even allowed to, we might be banned from talking about it.
Yeah, but it's funny you say that, Ray, because the other thing I had on my list to mention was, imagine how powerful cancel culture will be. Like right now, if you say the wrong thing, you're blocked from Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, right? By the gods of Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. But could you imagine if people are in the metaverse, there's one nation, one law that we all agree to in the metaverse, and then a certain fringe group becomes dominant and they don't like certain speech, you get canceled immediately. We might be canceled. The three of us might be so outdated that we're canceled on March 4th, 2029, when the revolution occurs and the metaverse takes over.
It's interesting because theoretically, based on your hypothesis here, you would not even be able to infringe in the first place. I mean, if the AI is that powerful, I mean, we're talking about like a utopian version of the metaverse.
Or would it be dystopian?
Or, well, yeah, sometimes those two things are oddly similar, right?
Right.
But you wouldn't even be able to infringe in the first place. But again, it really just comes down to who's making the rules. I mean, because it's the AI, but who's making the AI?
Right. Yeah. All these nations would have to get together and program the rules. But you're right, Ray. I didn't even think of that. The moment you put your sign up on your store, blap, it would be gone.
Right. So I have a question that sort of brings us a little bit back to today, to reality, right?
Okay.
Because we're way off in
To the real verse, right?
Yeah, to the real verse. If so, there's different I guess forms of the metaverse. There isn't necessarily, the way I understand, just one metaverse. So there's Meta, right, which is Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg, and that's like a platform. It's like, you know, a Fortnite owned by a different company is a sort of metaverse where there's commerce, there's people doing things, it's a game. But let's just look at Meta. Meta is Facebook, which is an American company. When you sign up for it, you agree to a use policy, a privacy policy, and all that. Are those things based on, I don't know the answer, I'm putting this out to you guys. Are those things based on US law? And if you're in Europe, are you agreeing by signing up and checking that box to adhere by those laws? So would that be the way to define the jurisdiction then when it comes to IP rights?
Like where the company, well, in the instance, so you're kind of thinking of a multiverse, right? Where you have several different metaverses, right? You have the Baidu metaverse, you have there's 15 different companies in different countries that have metaverses. So then I guess it'd be the multiverse. Right. But in that case, you'd say wherever the country is domiciled, or whatever the company is domiciled, it would be that country's laws that govern that metaverse, right?
Right. And just like parts of the internet are banned in certain countries,
right,
or websites are banned, there could be certain metaverses that are only allowed in certain places.
Yeah, unless there becomes one metaverse. That's what I'm getting at. Is I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess it would be better to have like 15 or 20 metaverses, because then if you get killed in one, you could still go to another one, right? Or there could be metaverses for hard right people and metaverses for hard left people. And you could spend your entire life in utopia for your own particular ideology, right? Then it is your utopia. You know, there's some metaverses storming the Capitol, some metaverses burning down this or that. I mean, there's every different ideology has a metaverse, right? That's kind of a cool concept. And in that case, it might be easier to have the nation where that company is domiciled use those laws, right? But if there's one metaverse for the world, that creates a more interesting and complicated problem.
Yeah.
Because then Anna's, go ahead, Anna.
I'm thinking that if that is the case, it depends on the domicile of the company. Then the company can choose where to establish the company, right? A lot of people establish companies in Bermuda and so on. And then they can choose a country where the law favor them for this platform and so on.
Yeah, right. And there are laws on that already, right? Where a company exists. And in that case, it would probably be a lot easier. But again, I'm thinking of the metaverse, which is a worldwide platform. Because that's probably what Zuckerberg wants. You know, he wants people of all national.
Tom, you froze again. We'll edit this out.
Lost again?
Yeah, you're okay. You're back now. So, of all nationalities. Oh no, you froze again. Must be something going on with his internet.
Yeah, not sure whether he's at home.
Oh, he dropped. Oh, okay, now you're back.
Sorry about that. So the big question is, where is it, right? Where is the metaverse? That's what I guess, that's what I leave on. And it looks like my internet is so unstable, I can't have continue a conversation, but I definitely question, where is it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the big question. And thanks to Anna for bringing that up. The the jurisdiction, I think, is probably the most confusing thing about this. What did were we going to talk at all about the I guess hardware implications of IP with the metaverse? Is there really much to say about that?
Well, it's the external, right? It's the outside the metaverse to build the metaverse infrastructure.
Right.
There's a ton of companies filing patent applications on the goggles, right? You have your virtual reality and your augmented reality goggles. I'm guessing there's going to be like bodysuits, so that you can feel all the stuff. There's going to be brain implants. There's going to be chemicals. There's going to be all kinds of stuff on how you can live in and experience the metaverse as if it was real. And I'm sure all that stuff is going to be patented, but still it's tricky, right? Because where is the metaverse? Where do these things, now, I guess that's more like what Anna said. If Anna is in Singapore wearing goggles, Singapore law would probably govern whether she could wear those goggles in Singapore, right, Anna? Because there's IP laws in Singapore that govern make, use, and sell and all that stuff.
Yeah, I guess because that's in that case, it's the patent law. So it's the make, use, sell, offer for sale, import, export, and so on, whether this is the rights. So if you as a user, you are using it then, but of course, usually the user will not be accused of infringing. Usually it's among the companies, the competitors, I suppose.
Yeah, that are selling it, right?
I mean, right.
Yeah, you don't want to go down, you don't want to have somebody show up at your house and rip the goggles off your face and say, you're infringing.
And the damages that you can get actually is how much? It's just that one device.
Right.
So
now,
really not.
Is it possible?
That'd be like a game of whack-a-mole, right? Every time you hit one down, another one pops up somewhere.
But is it possible for companies like Meta, say a metaverse provider or platform, to make it possible to only connect to their platform with certain approved devices?
Oh, yeah.
I would assume that's possible, right?
Yeah, except they might want to make it more of an open platform, kind of like the
might not be in their interest to do that.
Yeah, right.
Unless
I don't know.
Like, Apple, they want to have their own proprietary system.
Yeah, but I saw this movie about this futuristic movie where space was dominated by corporations and not nations. So like XYZ company was super powerful. It's like Microsoft. And ABC company is like Apple. And they're the ones that govern space because it's like the new frontier and there's no countries out in space. They're just mining, asteroids and stuff. And that's kind of like the metaverse. Each metaverse will be created by its own company, maybe. That goes back to having a multiverse, like the Microsoft verse, the Apple verse, the Baidu verse, the Anna verse. Anna becomes rich and famous and creates her own metaverse. So, then you'll be up there with the big guys. So that, though, would be kind of like everybody might want their own proprietary stuff then, their own proprietary goggles to get into the Anna metaverse. But I think it's more likely that this is going to become a metaverse where everyone accesses the same place. And that's where all the IP questions get very complicated.
I guess since we're talking about patents, right? Of course, there will be patents on the AI, not the AI, the AR, the VR, the hardware and user devices. But there will also be, patents on the applications. I guess applications is probably, because if you're talking about the hardware, there will just be a few companies that are working on it right now. And if you're talking about the hardware stack, maybe NVIDIA is doing the chips, the GPU, etc., and maybe Microsoft, Samsung, they have this kind of hardware, patents. They probably have built up a lot. I read somewhere that I think Samsung they have currently about 300 patents in this kind of hardware stack, the GPU stuff related to the Metaverse. Microsoft also has about this size. So these big guys will be doing on that. But if we talk about the applications, the games, the social media enterprise, all these applications, then more companies can actually apply patents in this area, and maybe this can be a potential area where there can be disputes.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's very complicated. It's going to be an interesting next 7 years from today before we're all totally dominated on March 4th, 2029 by the metaverse. But
So
it'll be a fascinating 7 years.
Prophet Tom Coulson has spoken of what the future entails with the metaverse. And Anna, thanks for joining us with this podcast. This was a lot of fun, and it's certainly exciting and interesting to speculate about what's going to happen. And there's a lot we don't know yet. So we'll have to return to this in the future. If any of you out there have your own opinions about what's going to happen with the IP implications related to the metaverse, please share it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us on your platform of choice. And thanks for listening to another episode of Stuff You Should Know About IP. Ciao.